You know, pedestrians get a lot of leeway in this town, in this state. I'm thinking maybe we should change that. Modify the laws. And maybe even start ticketing people who abuse the privilege. You know, the whole thing with pedestrians always getting the right of way. I think it's gone too far. Let's talk about it here. 663-1270, 663-1270. You know, you guys who cross the street and don't even look? That happens to me all the time. I'm driving down the road and somebody will just jump out and start crossing the street, just walking across the street, and they're not even looking to see what's coming. You guys got to stop that. You got to stop doing that. We no longer live in a culture where you can get away with that kind of thing. 663-1270, Jim Walsh on Supertalk 1270 and supertalk1270.com. Now, I've been in this town for 10 years. No, I was not born in North Dakota. Don't hold that against me. I say that because when I worked over at the other place across town, we actually had a boss there who said, don't tell anybody you were not born in North Dakota. They won't accept you. What, I'm supposed to lie about it or just pretend I've been here all my life? No, I was born elsewhere. Hey, I didn't have any say over where I was born. If I did, I might have chosen here. You know, I might not. I might have been born somewhere. I don't know. I was born in Delaware, and I came here for the opportunities. And I don't think anybody with half a brain is going to hold that against me. Half a brain, well, that pretty much eliminates anybody in my line of work. But anyway, so I got here 10 years ago, and I've noticed a lot of changes in this town and in this state, in this culture, since 2003, May of 2003, when I first got here. And one of the things I've noticed when I first got here, it was very common to see somebody crossing the street and whoever was driving along would actually stop. The driver would actually stop and yield the right of way to the person who was crossing the street. Now, there was a time in this town when you could do that and get away with it, and it wasn't a big deal. No longer the case, though. You try that nowadays with the increase in traffic, with the increase in tempo of the traffic, you got a potential of screwing a lot of people up. So I'm starting to see a little bit less of it, but I am still seeing a lot of people who think, well, I'm just going to cross the street, and they don't even bother to look. I can't believe that. Look, I was raised on the East Coast. Okay, I was raised not in a big city, a medium-sized city, a town maybe a little larger than Fargo, a little smaller than Minneapolis, okay, kind of a medium-sized town there. And when I grew up, I was taught, you know, you technically have the right of way, but that doesn't mean you can just cross the road without paying any attention to what's happening. If you do that, you're going to get killed. You always stop. You always look both ways before you cross the road. Does anybody teach that out here? What are they teaching you guys in school, in your younger years, in grammar school or whatever? Are they teaching you, well, you have the right of way, so just cross the street and don't even bother looking? I swear they must be, because I see so many people doing it. You got to stop doing that. You got to stop it. You're going to get killed. It amazes me. Number here is 663-1270. I'm really beginning to think that we're going to have to start doing what they do in California, where they actually write citations for pedestrians who act like jerks. I don't know about the jaywalking thing so much, but, you know, these people just kind of step out in the street and there's a car coming. They don't even look. They just say, oh, he'll stop. Or they don't even look at all. They just assume, well, if somebody is coming, they'll stop. What's the matter with you people? Sorry, the days of the slow, easygoing pastoral lifestyle in this town are gone forever. Things are moving a lot faster these days. And we got a lot of folks moving here from other places where they don't think that way. One of the most valuable things I was ever taught in driver's ed was there is no such thing as an absolute right of way. And I say that because when I discuss this with people, they get all worked up. Well, we have a right of way when we're crossing the street. The law says the pedestrians have a right of way. Yeah, and it's not enough to be right, though. And you keep doing what I'm describing here, and you're going to be dead right. So you tell me if you have a problem with that. Changing the laws to start cracking down on pedestrians who abuse the right of way in this town. 663-1270. Love to hear from you. Also coming up, we're going to talk about why religious people make mean drunks. Jim Walsh on Supertalk 1270. More conversation coming up.
Right now it's 66.
Get the app called Radio Pup for your iPhone and take us everywhere you go. Bismarck and Mandan's own Supertalk 1270.
Talking about whether we should change the laws around here regarding pedestrians and the right of way, because a lot of pedestrians, frankly, are abusing the privilege. When you just jump out right in the street, start crossing the street without at least looking to see if the car is going to slow down, you're going to get in trouble. So I'm thinking maybe we should change that. We no longer live in the kind of town where you can get away with doing that kind of thing. You're going to mess up traffic. You're going to get yourself hurt or killed. I don't want that. Do you? No, of course not. 663-1270. Jim Walsh on Supertalk 1270. I'd love to hear from you this morning. Now, what we're talking about here, now I remember a couple of years ago this came up when I was out driving with, I'll just say an acquaintance, okay? Somebody who I shall not mention by name. He was my wife. But anyway, so this mystery person who I live with and, I happen to be married to, we're out driving one day. I think we were at the zoo that day, and we were coming out of the Dakota Zoo, and they got that little driveway thing that kind of curves around and gets you back out on the road there. And we were coming back out on the road there, and there was I think it was a teenager who was standing there on the side of the road, and he was watching the car go by, watching us go by. And I saw him there, and he was looking at me, and I looked at him, and I just kept on driving right by. And my wife said to me, he said, you can't really do that. I said, do what? She said, you should have stopped and let that kid cross the road. I said, why? She said, because legally, the pedestrian has the right of way. I said, okay. I said, that's ridiculous. She said, well, that's the law. It turns out she was right. Pedestrians are considered to have the right of way, but that's ridiculous. If I'm standing on a street corner getting ready to cross the road, I'm not just going to cross indiscriminately, whether cars are coming or not. I'm going to wait until it's reasonably safe to cross. What's wrong with that? But you see a lot of people in this town who, it's almost like they're trying to make a point. And the point is, I can cross the street anytime I want to, and I don't even have to look because legally, I have the right of way. And if you hit me, you're going to be in trouble. Well, I got news for you. That ain't necessarily going to stop you from being hit. All right? Because it's a different culture we live in from 20, even 10 years ago. The people, a lot of the folks moving here from other parts, you may say what you will about them, but they are here now. They are us. They are part of our community now. And they don't think the way the old folks do about that. You guys who have been here for a long time, were born and raised here. I mean, I love you, but come on, you have to adjust to changes. And I'm thinking maybe it's time to start modifying the laws on this one as well and actually issuing citations to people who abuse the privilege as pedestrians. Because what I see happening in a lot of cases here, these people cross the street without looking, and they're screwing up the flow of traffic. Because the flow of traffic is not what it used to be. The flow of traffic is things are a lot faster. You don't have the margin for error that you used to have. And people go nuts with this kind of stuff. It's like saying, well, we liked it better in the old days. Hey, I don't care if you did or not. I like certain things better in the old days too, but the old days are not here anymore. Gone are the days when you could, start your car up on a cold winter's morning and leave it running with the door unlocked while you went back in and had breakfast. Can't do that anymore. It's just the way things are. You don't have to like it. But, if you don't want your car ripped off, then maybe you better think about doing things differently from the way we all used to do it. And gone are the days forever when you could just step out off the curb and cross the street and not even really give it a second thought. You just kind of took it for granted that if somebody was coming, they'll slow down for me. They'll stop for me. I see that guy coming, but, I'll step on out here and cross the street. He'll stop. Well, maybe not. And it's not because drivers are bad. It's a different culture. And the tempo has gotten faster. Less margin for error. That's very significant. I mean, these people driving these cars are human beings, just like you. So you got to stop doing that. And I'm wondering if maybe it's time to take it to the next step and actually start having maybe meter maids or whatever you would call them, the equivalent of a meter maid, maybe having them out there and while they're issuing parking tickets, if they see somebody abusing the privilege as a pedestrian, crossing against the light or jaywalking or whatever, maybe it's time to start doing what they do in California and start issuing citations to these people as a way of discouraging them from doing that. If it's going to come to that, I'm not a big fan of, government as to enforce social conformity, but we are talking about public safety here. And a lot of people are just plain not getting the message. So you tell me if you think this works for you. By all means, please. Number here is 663-1270. And you can also comment online, 663-1270. That's the main number here in the studio. And online, we also have a lot of great shows available on demand from our regular broadcast schedule, and they're available at supertalk1270.com, and you can leave comments as well. Also, be sure and join us on Facebook at facebook.com/supertalk1270. So we're talking about the situation with pedestrians in North Dakota in general. I'm not really sure how it is in other parts of the state. I've been pretty well isolated here. Well, that's the wrong word. I don't want to say isolated. It's not like I can't leave. I can come and go anytime I want. I stay here because I work here and I like it here. But in other parts of the state, I would assume they're kind of sort of dealing with the same kind of situation. Probably in Fargo, they're a little hipper about it. I would think Fargo's a bigger city. You got more of a, cosmopolitan way of thinking about things. So we're starting to get that here. And I, for one, don't have a problem with that. Because, like I say, I was raised in not a big, giant city, but a decent-sized town where, things move along at a pretty good clip. So it doesn't bother me. It's, for me coming here, it was kind of hard getting used to doing it the other way. Slowing down and stopping and let everybody go by whenever they want to cross the road. Well, what I'm saying is you just can't do that anymore. Not here. We've got too many folks who have moved here from elsewhere. We got too many folks who just don't do it the old way. The pace of life is a bit faster here now. And you don't have to like it. You don't have to necessarily approve of it. But that is a whole different kettle of walleyes. You like that? A little local reference, see, walleyes. I could have said kettle of fish, but kettle of walleyes makes it really, forget it. You see what I'm saying, though? So you tell me, because I've had this conversation with people I know, acquaintances, especially the older folks, God bless them, and they're like, well, I should cross the road whenever I want to. Well, okay, suit yourself, but you're going to get yourself, what's the word? Killed. That's the word, right. Yeah. So by all means, I'd like to hear from you. Number here is 663-1270. A couple other quick things I'd like to mention that kind of stick in my craw, things I've heard in the last week. This is the first chance I've had to do a show since the Robin Williams tragedy. I was a big fan of the guy, and it kind of bummed me out last week. I was really, toward the end of the week, last week, I was just feeling kind of down. I mean, I didn't know the man, never met him. I've seen his movies. He was, a big part of my pop culture intake for many, many years, and it was just such a sad story. But one thing I've got to say, it just burns me when I hear this. You see it a lot on Facebook. You hear people saying, pray for the clinically depressed, or pray for Robin Williams. No, don't pray for the clinically depressed. I got a better idea. Instead of praying for these people who are genuinely sick and are suffering, instead of praying for them, why don't you actually get off your rusty dusty and do something? Actually reach out, contribute to community activities for these people. Donate money to whatever the cause is to help them. Actually help. If you've got a friend who's depressed, actually take some time and sit with that person and talk them through it. Sorry if I'm treading on a lot of corns here, but this is a subject that gets me so worked up. Oh, we should pray for these people. That is just, do you have any idea how condescending that sounds? It's like you want to get the moral credit for helping them without actually putting in any of the effort. Well, if you're a religious person, how about this for an old saw? God helps those who help themselves and who help each other. All right? You want to put it that way? Fine. Put it that way. That's cool. But enough with this. Well, let's just say a prayer for them. In other words, let's do something to make ourselves feel good, but without actually having to lift a finger and do anything constructive in the process, because hell, that would be work. Work. It's like the evangelical Maynard G. Krebs. We're going to pray for them because actually doing something, that would be work. Work. Remember Dobie Gillis? You'd say work around. It was like work was kryptonite to Maynard G. Krebs. Work. Yeah. And then, of course, he became Gilligan. Anyway, 663-1270. What we've been talking about is the pedestrian situation in Bismarck and North Dakota by extension, probably to a lesser extent in a lot of places, maybe to a greater extent in others. But what I'm saying is you can't just cross the road without looking like you used to in this town. And if you're one of those people doing it, you're going to get yourself in trouble. And getting all self-righteous and huffy and about the old days we didn't have, that is not going to help. That's just going to get you hurt. I don't want to see people get hurt because they can't or won't adjust to the changes in society. That's what I'm saying. And your comments are welcome. 663-1270. Coming up, why religious people are meaner drunks than non-religious people. It's an actual study. Go figure. We'll get to that in just a few minutes here. Supertalk 1270 and supertalk1270.com. Jim Walsh with more comments and your calls coming up.
Right now it's 66.
You're never more than a few minutes from a weather update here on Supertalk 1270.
Okay, here's a headline for you. Ladies, catcalls are flattering. Deal with it. Number here is 663-1270. Summertime in North Dakota, big thing, of course, construction going on. It's the old joke. You have two seasons out here. You have winter and you have road construction season. Let me ask you, in all seriousness, is that a big deal out here? I know in some places it is. But especially you ladies, especially you attractive ladies, do you get catcalls from the road crews in this town? I mean, do you? I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't know because I'm a dude. I'm not a girl. I'm not a chick. As the feminists would say, I just don't get it, man. So you tell me if the guys do that in this town and how it makes you feel. Do you feel like a piece of meat when it happens? I'm genuinely curious. I'm not setting you up here. I genuinely would be curious to know. 663-1270. What about ladies? Do you get catcalls? Do you get the guys when you drive past a road crew and the guys see you, do they go, woo, woo, oh yeah, check that out, and all that business? I know in some places they do, but what about here? 663-1270. Some comments here from a lady who writes, and again, I love this headline. She says, ladies, catcalls are flattering. You should enjoy it. You should savor it, she says. She says, summer to me means three things: heat, hemlines, and hard hats. The 3 H's right up in the row there. It's the time of year when I can parade around. Oh, she's writing here. It's not me. It's her. I can parade around in a skimpy dress with strategic cutouts. And when I know I'm looking good, when I know I'm looking good, I can brazenly walk past the construction site, anticipating that, and, yo, mama, the cat call. Works every time. My ego and I can't fit through the door. And I'll never forget the first time, she writes. Age 20, living in New York, interning, I should say, for MTV in Times Square. Nice work, I guess you can get it. Taking advantage of the company's lenient, or maybe the word is liberal, summer dress policy. I was wearing a tightly molded pink tank top and black capris when I strolled by 2 construction guys on the lunch break. The guys high-fived each other and went, "Hey, you're hot! Woo! Yay! High five!" And she writes, "I was over the moon." What a contrast from those coy college boys who never expressed how they felt. This was a brave new world where guys tell it like they see it. So the guys do that do they do that here, or are they more like those coy college boys I was talking about? Oh, no, we can't do that. We've got to be like gentlemen. We've got to be politically correct. Just wondering, because apparently not all women are offended by that. Not all women are mortified. Just wondering how that works in this town. 663. Like I say, I wouldn't know because I'm not a woman. And I don't dress like that, thankfully. You don't know how grateful my family is that I don't dress like that. But 663-1270. I don't want to talk too much about the Ferguson thing today. Possibly on Friday. I will be here for an hour Friday with a show. It's, every 4th Friday on Free for All Friday, I get a shot at doing an hour show. And I may talk about it more to a greater extent then. I'm not going to talk about it too much today, but there were 1 or 2 things I wanted to mention here. Talking about, and I think this is great, somebody actually came up with an app for your iPhone to report police brutality and to rate officers. Now, I don't know if that's really an issue yet or if it ever will be an issue around here. Although bear in mind, again, it's another way that this town, this community has changed in the last few years. We're a lot more of a racially and culturally mixed society than we were 10 years ago. And it's probably not going to go back to the old way. That's probably permanent, regardless of what happens with the oil and with the economy and everything else. So it's something we need to think about. You know, the Ferguson, Missouri thing, could that happen here? Well, I hope not, but I'm just curious and I'm concerned because, anytime you have a society where people have lived one way for a long, long time, and then all of a sudden you've got all these people coming into that community with different ideas, different appearances, different values, there's going to be some friction. So if the city fathers are not thinking about this, maybe they should be. 663-1270. As more information comes out surrounding the whole mess in Ferguson, the guy who was killed during an encounter with the police, fueling a lot of speculation. The failure of the Ferguson police to deploy body cams, which already are reportedly in their possession. They have them. They just haven't really used them that much. The lack of dash cams in police cars, which I'm all in favor of. I'm in favor of the body cams. The lack of communication with this guy's family about the circumstances surrounding his death. They all contributed to what has happened there over the last few days, and it just continues to be a real mess there. Police reportedly seized a cell phone from a witness to the shooting who may have caught a portion of it on film. That video, to my knowledge, as of yesterday at least, has not been released by the police. Now, the ability, and this in my mind goes back to the Rodney King thing, the ability to record police while they're on the job has become a lot more widespread with the development of cell phones or smartphones, if you will. And a lot of police have resisted this. They either ignore the law, in a lot of cases, they ignore the law, or they seize video as, quote, evidence, unquote. Yet the thing is, and I'm certainly not the first person to point this out, videotaping police transactions, as much as anything, is for the protection of the police. It's likely to exonerate them a lot more easily in certain situations. One study I came across found complaints about alleged police brutality down 88% after the introduction, I should say, of body cameras. Yet despite the laws protecting it, the residents' right to film police will only be as powerful as the tools that can protect it. Well, now we have a couple of teenagers in Georgia. They've created an app called 5-0. Yeah. It lets users report, quote, police brutality, unquote, and it lets users rate officers. This is from the Business Insider publication. 5-0 lets users submit the details of any incident of police abuse and rate the specific officer. The app also has community boards for different counties so that users can communicate and plan responses to any difficulties with local police. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, well, here in North Dakota, this is not a problem. Why are we even talking about this? Well, we should talk about it because, well, for one thing, we don't want it to become a problem. Like I say, anytime you have a society, a culture like ours, where for so long, basically, it was German Catholic, German Lutheran, maybe a few Irish and a few Native Americans thrown in for good measure. In 10 years, you went from that to what you currently have. You're seeing a lot more people of color in this community as they come here for various reasons, take advantage of certain opportunities. And I, for one, certainly don't have a problem with that. I don't see why anybody in their right mind would. But inevitably, there's going to be some friction somewhere because people are just not used to it. And a lot of people simply just don't want to acknowledge it or want to deal with it. But you're going to have to. And if there's going to be a potential problem involving police and certain people in the community, why not stop it before it starts? The idea here with this 5-0 app is to collect data that users can then bring to the attention of whoever, the media, law enforcement, community activist type people. So it's no longer just a case of he said, she said. You see what's happening here? You know, for years now, we've been talking about Big Brother watching us. Now we have a way to watch him back. I think that's a good thing. I would think if you are a cop, you would have to think, I would assume that they would think that's a good thing too, because like I said, in this one community in particular, they put this in effect. They allowed videotaping of police. They had the dash cams and the body cams. And again, the complaints about police brutality went down 88%. Because it was no longer a case of, well, this guy said this guy said that. Now we could actually know what was going on. I think that's a great thing. 663-1270. Love to hear from you. Coming up, story of why religious people, according to one study, make meaner drunks. Yeah. Cool 98. There I go again. No, I'm in Cool in the afternoon. This afternoon, our sister station. That happens once in a while. I get my radio stations mixed up, even though they're right down the hall from one another. No, I'll be on Cool 98.7 this afternoon until 6 o'clock. Right now, I'm on Supertalk 1270, and I would love to hear from you. Hang in there.
Right now it's 66.
Get the traffic and weather information you need anytime on Supertalk 1270 and online at supertalk1270.com.
Going to talk in a moment here about why religious people, really religious people, are mean drunks. I've got my own hypothesis on that, and we'll get to that in just a moment here. First of all, some response to my comments from earlier in the hour when I said, people say we should pray for the clinically depressed. No, and I said, let's not do that. Do something actually constructive. Reach out and help these people. Get involved with them. Help them out. Lend a hand. How much did prayer help Robin Williams? I'm sure a lot of people around him, maybe friends or family members. I don't know how religious they were. I have no idea if they were religious people. I have no idea what his views were on the subject. But really, how much did prayer help him? It didn't. At some point, you have to act. That's what I said. Number here, 663-1270. A couple of comments here. Bill writes, I have no problem with other people praying, always assuming they know the situation in the first place, which I have the impression most people did not as regards Robin Williams. And I said a prayer for his family after I found out he had died, much the same way you might arrange to have a memorial service for the recently deceased relative of a dear friend or vice versa. It's also extremely likely, I suspect, that the act of prayer in these situations is a means for the person saying it to gain some inward comfort in the face of a truly dreadful situation. And again, I have no problem with that per se. However, he writes, and it's a big qualification, it is first and foremost vital to reach out and offer companionship, and more especially medical assistance in the most immediate and specific terms for any depressed person. I look at it this way. Whether you believe in prayer or not, it's always necessary to rely on the best medical resources available. If you know there's a problem, and if you do believe in prayer, your concrete actions over and above praying might be the answer to someone else's prayer from their point of view, no less than yours. Most people, I dare say, people, if they're not Christian Scientists or something, are familiar with this distinction and would act accordingly without needing to be told. That's one comment. Here's another comment from Wally. Wally writes, if you think you're helping me by praying for me and my depression, just don't tell me about it. It doesn't help, period. Telling me you've prayed for my depression only tends to prove it doesn't work. Kind of sounds judgmental, too, like I may not have tried that myself. But trust me, I've dealt with my depression in more ways than you can imagine. Pray for yourself. Pray to understand the true nature of reality. My subject, my thoughts on the prayer issue have always been, prayer doesn't change things, prayer changes people, people change things. And I never realized that that was a controversial thing to say until I started saying it to people. Well, they ask me my opinion on the subject, and I tell them, and they go, what? You don't think prayer changes anything? That's terrible. What's the point of praying if it doesn't change anything? Well, it doesn't change anything. It may change you, and you can change things. It's amazing what people choose to get worked up about. Anyway, 663-1270. Like I say, I've believed that all my life, and I never thought there was anything controversial about it until I actually started mentioning it to people. And then some people are very mortified by that. They're very offended that you would suggest that. Now, speaking of, since we're on kind of a religious jag for the moment here, a study out of Kentucky shows that deeply religious people are much more likely to become violent after consuming alcoholic beverages, at least more so than their less religious counterparts. Rented lips today. Too much caffeine, I think. And sometimes, you overdo it a little bit. You get a little tweaky. Researchers in Kentucky have found a correlation, they say, between religion and alcohol. Evidence suggests that the stronger the person's religious views, the more hostile and aggressive they are when drinking. Correlation was discovered by I'm not going to give you the whole story here, the University of Kentucky, College of Arts and Sciences. About the studies, the professor said, to oversimplify it here a bit, in many cases, the more religious someone is, the more aggressive they will become after drinking alcohol. Well, that actually makes sense to me because I've known some very, very religious people in my life. And a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them seem to be holding back a lot of anger and hostility for some reason. I'm not going to get into the whole political ramifications of that. Let's just say I've known a lot of very, quote, godly people, unquote, in my day, who I was genuinely afraid of. Kind of people who, if they knew where I lived, I'd move. Scary people. I don't know too many atheists or agnostics who are like that. There's probably a few out there, but it seems to correlate more with the hardcore, way out religious people. Just saying. Your own conclusions. What else here? Speaking of, another story about the Bible. Oh, isn't that precious? UK, a British hotel chain, under fire for removing Bibles from all of its hotel rooms. But a representative for the company said there are now some important details that must be clarified. After the Daily Mail, that's a big publication in England, reported that these Bibles had been removed from the Travelodge hotels in an effort to avoid upsetting non-Christians, quote unquote. Doesn't bother me a bit. I'm not a Christian. It doesn't bother me whether they have them there or not. Anyway, the company is responding by noting that the elimination of the holy books was a years-old decision, not a new change, as some people have apparently been led to believe. The representatives said that the Bibles, which were, traditionally, of course, they've been donated by the Gideons, have not been removed from hotels entirely. All of the hotels do have Bibles in the hotels. Anyone can take them at any time. We're not removing them from the hotels. They're still available. They're just not automatically in the rooms. They're available at the hotel reception desks. So if you're checking into a hotel and you want to do some Bible reading and you don't have your Bible, no big deal. You just go to the reception desk at Travelodge and say, I say, good bean, might I have one of those holy books there? And I'll give you one, and I don't see what the problem is. Just because we're not putting them in the drawer anymore where you run across it whether you intend to or not. It's amazing, like I said, it's amazing the things people choose to get worked up about. Although I will say this, I am a strong believer in everybody reading the Bible. I've read the Bible. I grew up Catholic, and even though in the Catholic culture they're not really big on Bible reading, we had this big family Bible, more like a family heirloom than anything, a place for recording birth, death, baptisms, whatever. But we did have this big Bible, and I actually started reading it and got interested, and I read the whole thing, more or less. Not in one sitting, but I did read it. And I agree with, I think it was Penn and Teller who said this. He said, everybody should read the Bible cover to cover at some point in their lives for the simple reason that we need more atheists and nothing will get you there faster. Hear, hear. Your comments are welcome. Supertalk1270.com. Also on Facebook.com/Supertalk1270. I'll be back again Friday morning at 11 with more of the same old shoot 'em up and the same old rodeo. Yee-hoo! Jim Walsh for Supertalk 1270. Have a good one. Thanks again for listening.